Welcome back. It's Anthony Farrell. Today we're in the wonderful world of Capture One. So Capture One, I feel like it's a phenomenal tool I've been using for maybe 3-4 years now. And today we're talking specifically AI masking. I think AI is one of those things where it's really easy to feel like, it's just taking over and it's going to put us out of a job. But truthfully, AI is a tool, and if utilized correctly, it can make your job in life just a lot easier. So today we're going to talk about Capture One's AI masking because I feel like it's phenomenal. And if you're not using it, hopefully this video changes your mind. So what I will say, in the past, the masking tool in Capture One has been just okay. Like if you needed to do a simple gradient mask or an oval mask, it was cool. Nowadays, it is phenomenal. So what we're gonna do is, I have 4 examples here and I'm gonna break down AI masking and show you some different examples for each one of these images and how I would use them in best practice. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So here I am in Capture One. I am on Capture One 16 point, let me make sure, Capture One 16.5.4.26. I don't know if those numbers mean anything to you, but you do want to be on a fairly recent version of Capture One in order to best utilize these features. If you don't see these features, then it's because you're not on the newest update. So I have 4 images here. Before we start talking about these images, where are the AI masking tools? Now, typically when you open your Capture One, you're going to start in your library tab. What you want to do is find this tab that says adjust. It has these 3 lines with the 3 adjustment sliders. And when you click on it, you should get something similar to this. Now, if you don't see layers and masks, because that's what we're going to need today, what you're going to do is find a empty spot and then click on the add tool and find layers and mask. Once you find it, click on it and it'll add it to your toolbar over here. Now, once you got it here, let's dive into it. Now, I mentioned that, masking used to be okay. You have the draw mask, the gradient, the gradient and the radial. Those are okay. We're talking about AI masking. So now we have these 3 little bars here and they do something incredible. So on this particular image, we just have a model on a plain white backdrop. This is a very simple example, but it's something tricky about this image and I want to show you exactly what. I wonder if you can guess what it'll be. So when I click on subject, let's see how long this takes. Done. Simple as that. So how well did it do? Because at first glance, when I click the button, it looks like nothing happened. But as you can see, there's now a subject mask under the layers. So in order to see exactly what is going on with our mask, I'm going to use the hotkey for showing my mask. And on my computer, it is M. So as you can see, this looks pretty good. I'm going to scroll around. Everything perfect. Now what about, so if we zoom in here, this red portion shows you what is being masked. And as you can see, even with the fine fibers of her hair, it did perfect. And I think that is phenomenal. This would have took ages in Photoshop if we wanted to get these strands, get a mask that's perfect. So now that I have it selected, what can I do? I'm going to hide my my mask, zoom back out. So what I would typically do in this image, I'm going to bring her up in exposure just a little bit, increase the contrast, and then maybe add a little bit of clarity, not much. I'm not the type of person to add a lot of clarity. And now let's see exactly what happened. What's the difference? So if I uncheck my subject mask, you can see that's without it. And that's with adjustments. I feel like it's a little bit too much, so let's bring it down. Perfect. So that was the subject. What happens if I click the background? It does not adjust anything on our subject mask. It actually created a new layer here. So now we have a background mask. Same thing if we show our mask, perfect. Everything looks great. So I'm gonna hide that, and same thing, I can make adjustments. I can come off on the backdrop, come down, if I wanted to change the hue of the backdrop, go into my levels and let's say, I'll do this. A little blue, and then maybe a little green. And as simple as that, we can change the color of our backdrop. I think that's phenomenal. Now, this isn't what I would normally do to this image, but I wanted to show you just how meticulous the masking is and how well it was gonna do with the hair. And if I zoom in on the hair, you can see there's almost no distinguishable difference as like masking. Like you can't tell where the mask begins or ends. And I think that's incredible, especially given like right here in this area. Perfect. Amazing. Now let's move on to the next image because this is a real life example. So for me, generally when I'm out shooting in the elements, what I would typically do is I try to keep my subject basically away from the sun as far as having it directly in front of them, just because I feel like it takes away from the image. The image feels a little bit flat and I don't get the best out of it as far as contrast. So in this image, the sun is over her right shoulder, or camera right shoulder, and she's falling into shadow. A few years ago, this would be a pain to try to fix. In today's age, it takes no time. So what we need to do is to bring her up in exposure and make her stand out, because what I should have done, if I had the chance, I would have had someone with a reflector bouncing the sunlight back on her just to fill in those shadows. But I didn't have that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back up to our layers and mask, click on subject. Once again, took no time. And now we're going to bring up the exposure. And this one's gonna be by quite a bit. So I'm basically at 3/4 of a stop. And if I zoom in, it looks okay, but what I'm saying, it starts to get a little hazy. So you see right here in the hair, I feel like her hair is getting a little hazy. So what I'm gonna do is bring up the contrast. So it's gonna make those highlights pop and those shadows go down a bit. So about 10, and just uncheck and see the difference so far. I think that looks okay, but we need to go a little bit farther. So let's go down on the blacks and boost the highlights. And now I feel like that looks great. We can actually push this a little bit even farther on the exposure. So let's go to almost a stop. So you see what I did there? That looks great. You still get the contrast. You still get everything that you want out of this image. And because I shot in RAW, I'm able to do this, and that just explains how powerful this tool can be in combination. Because in Photoshop, this would have took some time. I would have had to make for one, create the mask, even though AI masking in Photoshop is pretty good too, but you have to create a different layer for your curves, for your levels. If you're gonna do anything as far as color adjustments, here you just create the mask and all the tools are already at your hand. So why not just do it here? So I think saturation could come up just a hair, and that would be it. Like without, with. I think that is incredible, and this took me virtually no time. And if I wanted to go into the retouching process when I export this into Photoshop, it carries all of this over for me, and I just love that for me. Now let's move on to the next example. So here we have a wonderful, wonderful portrait headshot, beauty headshot of my friend Becky. This was an incredible shoot. And once again, like I said, I don't like having my source light directly in front of my model, just because I want to create some contrast, some depth. Now, sometimes I run into issues. In this particular case, Becky was bringing her hand under her chin because we wanted to see this butterfly, but that hand is casting a shadow over here on the right side of her body, or camera left. Up here, we've talked about the subject and the background buttons. What's this people option? So if we click on it, and I'm gonna click on the drop down, we have options that we can choose here. We can do body skin, face skin, pupil and iris, sclera, eyebrows, lips, hair, basically everything dealing with the person. I'm gonna try body first. So we're gonna check body, create a mask. How long does it take? Instant. Love that. And let's see what that mask looks like. I think it looks incredible already. So went around the butterflies. Love that. Like it easily could have mistaken the butterfly for part of her body because those butterflies are on her body. So now we have a mask here. What I want to do is I need to bring up the exposure here. So I'm going to bring up the exposure, and I think that looks good. Now that we have brought up her skin, and we're going to look at this again, I think it looks pretty good. I probably could come down just a little bit on the exposure, come up on that contrast, because I feel like when you bring up exposure, you start getting some haziness in the shadows, and I just want to make sure that we're counteracting that. So that is without, that's with. I think that looks pretty good. Now I could go a step further and just kind of really get into it. So say for example, I just want just a face this time. We're going to create a mask and we're going to come up just a little bit. And this basically allows me to work independent of everything. It doesn't have to, none of your decisions have to be blanket decisions when it comes to working in Capture One now. And I love that for me. So this is just without any adjustments. This is with. Simple as that. Now let's move on to this last example here. This last example, because up until now, everything that I've shown you has been with a person in the image. So what happens? Can you still use the subject and background tool when there are no people there? The answer is yes, you can. So if I click on subject here, and once again, mask has already been made. We're gonna show the mask, and once again, it is beautiful. Even with this problematic area with the flower right in front of the bottle, it goes smooth around it. Love that. So what happens, and we're gonna zoom back out, and let's get rid of this mask. What happens if we just want to, say for example, select the top of the bottle? How are we gonna do that? We can't use the subject, we can't use the background. What we're gonna use is the AI select tool. So I'm gonna click on this, and as I hover over the image, you start seeing this red selection tool just kind of follow my mouse. So in this case, I'm going to select just the top of the bottle, and as you can see, it created a mask. If I go over here and adjust my exposure, you can see it is affecting only the portion that I selected. Now, what happens if I'm getting into this and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have selected this part of the top as well. Like, do I have to create a new mask? No, you do not. If your layer is selected, you can go in using the same tool and just add to it. So you just click and it adds it. What happens if I don't want that anymore? So say you look at it and you're like, maybe that's too much. You can go in, instead of clicking, we're gonna hold Option first and then click. So now this turns to blue. Blue means it's gonna take away. So I'm gonna click, click, and now only the top is selected again. Honestly, I think this tool is absolutely incredible. It's very powerful, and you don't just have to do one layer at a time. So say you want to work on the top independently and then the bottle independently. Now, what you do need to do is click the plus button next to layers just to create a new adjustment layer. And still with the AI brush tool selected, you just click on the bottle now. And now the bottle is selected. So on this bottle, I really want to boost the contrast because I want it to pop. So come up on the contrast, and that looks great. Without, with. So really make that bottle pop a lot. Come up on the clarity and structure. And like I say, I'm working all on this independent of everything around in the picture. And this is great because this does almost 80% of the work before I even get into Photoshop. So once I get into Photoshop, then I'm gonna take my time and remove these specks of dust. I'm gonna remove this stem. But I don't have to worry about the extra stuff of making the bottle pop because I did that before I even got to Photoshop. So I'm saying all of this to say that this tool is honestly wonderful. I think it does a great job at making my life easier. It's quick and efficient. Hopefully this was a great explanation and opens your mind to using the masking tool in Capture One a lot more, because like I say, it is amazing. With that being said, I appreciate you guys for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away. And if you did like the video, let me know by liking the video. Subscribe if you already haven't. And until next time, peace.